Hey, James here from eBassGuitar, and in today's lesson I'm going to answer a question that I get asked a ton. What are the chords on the bass guitar? And I'm also going to take you through the 5 most important chord types on the bass guitar. Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar, and in today's lesson I want to answer the question, what are the chords on the bass guitar? I've had this a ton of times over at the free eBassGuitar Facebook group, basslabgroup.com, and I've wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that because it's a really interesting question. But before I do that, I want to let you know that there's also a free cheat sheet which comes with this lesson called the eBassGuitar Fundamental Chords Guide. There's a link below in the description of this video where you can download your copy. So let's dig into this question. What are the chords on the bass guitar? Now, the reality of the situation is I estimate 98% of the time the bass should not actually be playing chords. Now, a chord is where you play more than one note together. Let me just demonstrate. So you might play that note and you might play that note. And you'll find that guitarists and keyboard players do these all the time. It's part of what they do. So naturally, you may hear a guitarist or keyboard player going, so what are the chords that we're playing to this? And they will say it might be C, A minor, D and G. So naturally, I understand it. You will go, well, what's C, A minor, D and G on the bass guitar? But the reality of the situation is 98% of the time, I estimate, and certainly in my experience as a professional bass player for the past 15 years or so here in the UK, you should only play chords a couple percent of the time. Most of the time, you should be spent playing single notes. Let me demonstrate. That is our job as a bass player. But the other 2% of the time, it's amazing to understand what chords do and how we can use them on the bass guitar. So there are 2 scenarios you should use chords on the bass guitar. The first one is as a study aid, because it is great to say be able to voice a C major 7. So let me just do that. Here is, and then to an A minor 7, for instance, a D minor 7. Because this can really get us understanding chord sequences. And the second place you might want to use chords is just for a bit of variety and spice and interest. So I might, for instance, go, and that is a sound I absolutely love, but I use it sparingly, and that is the core thing. Use chords sparingly on the bass guitar. But I want to answer the question, if you hear a keyboard player say, we're going to be playing a C major chord, what do you do as a bass player? Now, you may have heard this term arpeggio, and what arpeggio means literally, the literal definition is a broken chord. So the go-to place if you hear a keyboard player or guitarist going, we playing a C chord, is to put a C major arpeggio or try and incorporate a C major arpeggio in your bass line. So let me demonstrate. We will go C, E, G, and then the C. And those are our go-to notes which will outline the harmony or the chords really, really well. So when a keyboard player guitarist says thinking in chords, we want to be thinking in arpeggios, and that's how we translate the chords from the instruments up the top end of the band down into notes that we can use in the bass. So now we know what chords are and how to use them on the bass guitar, I want to take you through the 5 different chord types. These are of course all written out in the Essential Chord Guide, which is in the link in the description below. But let's start off and go through these. The first type of chords that I think you should know and are really, really unique to the bass guitar are tenths. And I'm going to play you a tenth here in the key of C. So this is a C on the lower E string, and then a E on the high G string. So that is fret 8 and fret 9, and they're called tenths because they is the 10th note of the major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And they sound really good because there is a clear gap between the lowest note and the highest note. When the notes get closer together, as I'll demonstrate in a moment, they can become a little bit more muddy. So the tenths are really, really an effective sound. And we get two types of tenth that we use most of the time, and that is a major tenth, like that, or a minor tenth, like that. So this creates a sound a little bit like this. So that is the sound of the tenth. So that is the first chord that I recommend you use. And the tenths are great for using in standard pop and rock music because they outline major and minor chords really, really well. So the second chord type you need to know about is power chords, and these are used by guitarists a lot in rock music. And what these are is the root and the fifth. The crucial thing is they've stripped the third out of the chord, which gives it a very, very bare sound. So let me demonstrate. You could get a power chord by going a C there and a G there, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you got the scale. And you get a bit more clarity when you play them in the upper register of the neck like this. And you can hear they start to get a little bit more muddy and indistinct down the bottom range of the neck. First of all, understanding power chords is a great piece of understanding to have in the first place, but you might want to use them in your music to affect. Artists like Lemmy or bass players like Lemmy use them a lot in the more aggressive rock and metal music sound, in that sound which goes with it. But bass players also like Stanley Clarke use this a lot for the School Days sound from that classic album from the 70s. So like that. The other way you could use this is for the blues sound as well. So if we put that down there, the fifth, we can actually get the sixth as well by going. So there's a bunch of times you can use this sound. It's a really, really good one to understand. You can also make a 3-note power chord too. So if you take this onto the lower strings like this, like that, and you can put the octave in here, like, and it starts to become even more powerful. And I remember working on a show in the West End, the Queen show, We Will Rock You, and I can't remember the name of the tune, but one of them that had a big ending where the bass was required to put down a full power chord like this, and we had to make a really big rumbly ending like that. So if you want a lot of power down the bottom end, which works particularly well at the end of a song, power chords can be really, really good and a great effective tool to use. So the next chord type I want to show you is a thing called open chords, and this is we integrate using the open strings, and this can be incredibly effective if you're in a solo situation. Again, Stanley Clarke used this loads in the 70s. In reality, on a 4-string bass, there are only 3 open strings that we can really use to great effect. That is the E, the D, or the E, the A and the D, like so. And I'm just going to show you 3 or 4 different chords here that you can start off experimenting here. So the first one I would do is an E with a G sharp at the top there, and we get this great sound like that. And often we will use the open strings as a drone like this. We could actually shift the notes around on the top. You can pick any fret, but this is a particularly strong sounding one. Let me just demonstrate. So it's a great thing, so you get that drone below. But let me show you another one using the D. So we play the open D, and then the F sharp at the 11th fret like that. And then another great one is the A, and you can play the C sharp on the G string like that, or you could play it on the D string, it doesn't really matter. This is expanding on the tenths idea if you want to know theoretically what is going on here. So we can come up with ideas along these lines. And then to the D, to the A. Now the great thing with these is we can start creating little melodies on top, keeping the drone going. This is why it's so powerful. So let me demonstrate. So like that. I'm just improvising there, making stuff up. I've spent hours noodling with these ideas, trying to come up with little melodies. But experiment using the open strings as a drone. They're a really powerful sort of chordal idea that you can sort of integrate into your bass playing. Again, in a band situation, they're probably very, very limited, but if you ever get a solo, this can be a really, really effective tool. Now on chord type 4 and chord type 5, we want to get a touch more involved now. So we're going to talk about, first of all, open voicings. Now with open voicings and also closed voicings that we're coming onto, these have more of a jazz sound to them, because what we're going to do is we're going to integrate the seventh into the chord, and this creates a sound which is more synonymous with the world of jazz and the world of funk too. So let's first of all talk about open voicings. These are kind of an extension really of the 10th idea, because they have a clear 10th in there like so, but we add the 7th in here, so we like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to make it a dominant 7th or flattened 7th, and we get that sound in there, which is really, really powerful. And these work a lot better if you take them into the upper register of the bass guitar, because chords have so much more clarity in this area of the neck. Remember, down there is muddy and up here is a lot more kind of crystal clear, like so. And so that is the open voicing, and it's called open because there is this gap where we don't play on the A string. So, and we can have a dominant 7th like that, we can have a major 7th like that, we can have a minor 7th like that. So there are a bunch of different possibilities, different chord types we can voice out using this particular concept. Now let's move on to chord type number 5 now, and this is a closed voicings, and on a 4-string bass this comes off the A string. So I'm going to demonstrate with a C major up here, and what we do is we go C, E, and then we put the 7th at the top, so it's root, the 3rd, and the 7th like that. You'll notice on the the open voicings that we played just a second ago, we go root 7, 3. Up here we turn it the other way around, where we go root 3, 7. That's the big difference between the two, and also we lose that gap. So particularly these work a lot better on the top end of the neck. So and you can hear those 3rds and the 7th, they're a lot kind of richer harmonically, so they have more of that jazz sound together. But where they really come alive is when you start mixing chord type 4, the open voicings, and chord type 5, the closed voicings, together with you. So let me just demonstrate using a 1, 6, 2, 5 chord sequence, which you'll see loads in jazz. So like this. So and so you can see how playing these can really start to help your understanding of jazz. So don't forget, you can start to see these different chord types if you download the eBassGuitar Essential Chord Guide from below. But I just want to leave you with one more thought in this lesson, which I think is so important, and this is if you actually want to use chords on a gig. This is a couple of just very quick tips, is that Chords only really work if there is space harmonically and sonically to do this. So often you need to let other members of the band lay out at this point. So if you want to play these chords, if you've got the keyboard player and the guitarist doing it at the same time, the chances, again, it's going to get a bit stodgy and a bit muddy. So it only works if they lay out and they stop, because you want to have the clarity of these chords shining through, because it's not often that the bass plays the chords. So to make this happen, you've got two options, and this is my next tip. The first one is to strip out the other instruments altogether. This is more unlikely that you're going to do this, but the great band, there's an English funk band called Backdoor, which I still really am, amazing bass player called Colin Hodgkinson, and the lineup was literally drums, bass, and sax, and the bass took care of all of the harmony and the bass line. It's an incredible band, not that well known in the world, but amazingly innovative from the 70s. So that is one example of how it could be done. But in most situations, you're probably going to have either a guitarist or a keyboard player in there. And this is all about communication, and it's good to be able to ask them to stop playing, because musicians, once they start playing, often have trouble stopping playing and laying out and leaving space. It can take a lot of confidence to actually stop playing once you're actually going in the middle of a song. So if you want to experiment with these ideas, I suggest be a little bit ballsy and ask them just to lay out. Say, hey, can you lay out for a couple of choruses or at this section of the song so I can experiment with some chords and see what they sound like. So give that one a go and see what happens. So guys, that is the end of today's lesson. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please do give it a like and share on social. Don't forget to download the free fundamental chord guide that comes with this lesson by clicking the link below. And if you've got any questions, please do comment below. And I'll see you next time. I've been James from eBassGuitar.